Good day. Today's lecture is devoted to visual teaching methods as an important part of the broader system of learning methods. This topic is especially significant because visuality plays a major role in how students perceive, structure, and retain educational material. In university teaching, visual methods are valuable not merely because they make information more attractive, but because they help transform abstract content into clearer and more accessible forms. Therefore, the study of visual methods is essential for understanding how teaching can become more effective, more engaging, and more inclusive. At the outset, the lecture formulates its aim in concise terms to know and understand the visual teaching methods. However, this aim should be interpreted in a broader pedagogical sense. It is not enough simply to list visual methods, rather one must understand their instructional purpose, their conditions of effective use, and their place within the general structure of teaching. Accordingly, the lecture is directed toward methodological awareness rather than mere terminology. This slide defines visual teaching methods through the role of visual aids and technical means in the process of assimilation. At the same time, it correctly notes that these methods are used together with verbal and practical methods rather than in isolation. This is pedagogically important. Visual teaching should not be understood as an alternative to explanation or practice. On the contrary, its effectiveness lies in the fact that it strengthens and clarifies other forms of educational activity. Therefore, visuality functions as a supporting and intensifying principle within the larger instructional process. The presentation next identifies two fundamental visual methods, observation and illustration. Observation is described as purposeful perception through which students build accurate representations of reality. It contributes to the development of perception, memory, thinking, and imagination. Illustration, by contrast, makes use of visible objects and representations such as plants, animals, maps, tables, drawings, and blackboard or interactive whiteboard materials. Thus, the difference between the two methods is clear. Observation directs perception toward the object itself, whereas illustration presents the object or phenomenon in a visual form designed for explanation and understanding. This slide turns from definition to methodological application. Three conditions of effective illustration are highlighted: age appropriateness and accessibility, clear emphasis on key points, and consistency between content and aesthetics. In addition, students should have full visual access to the material, and the teacher must explain the main elements with precision. Consequently, illustration is not effective simply because an image is present. It becomes pedagogically meaningful only when it is carefully selected, clearly interpreted, and integrated into the learning objective. The method of demonstration is presented here as a more dynamic form of visual teaching. It includes the use of devices, equipment, experiments, films, and multimedia. Its purposes are to generate interest, create problem situations, and provide new information in a more concrete and compelling form. The slide also notes practical limits regarding video duration. This is especially important because demonstration must remain pedagogically controlled. Therefore, even visually rich material should be selected not by abundance, but by instructional relevance and cognitive appropriateness. The lecture then advances from traditional visuality to interactive visualization. The central idea here is that students should not remain passive observers. Instead, they may create diagrams, models, or digital projects themselves. This transforms visual learning into active educational work. The references to Piaget and inclusive education reinforce this point. Active interaction with visual material promotes deeper intellectual development than mere memorization, while visual support also increases accessibility for learners with diverse needs. Accordingly, interactive visualization combines cognitive activation with pedagogical inclusion. This slide highlights two further dimensions of visual methods: emotional influence and foreign language teaching. Bright images, photographs, and videos create stronger impressions and therefore intensify learning. The reference to Gardner is especially relevant here, since visual spatial intelligence may reveal important academic potential. In the context of foreign language teaching, visual methods are particularly effective. Flashcards, video dialogues, interactive games, and such platforms as WordWall and Quizlet support repetition, memorization, and motivation. Thus, visual teaching is not only cognitively useful, but also emotionally and linguistically productive. The next slide turns to future directions. Visual methods are described as interdisciplinary since maps, charts, models, and timelines are relevant across many subjects. At the same time, digital transformation introduces new possibilities through virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence. This development is especially significant because it shows that visual teaching is no longer limited to static illustration. On the contrary, it is becoming more immersive, interactive, and technologically complex. Therefore, visual methods remain one of the most promising directions in modern pedagogy. This concluding thematic slide summarizes the educational value of visual teaching methods in 4 directions: understanding, engagement, development, and inclusion. Observation, illustration, and demonstration connect theory with real-world phenomena. Digital technologies and multimedia increase engagement and support student-centered learning. Visual methods also develop memory, imagination, analytical thinking, and creativity. Finally, they strengthen inclusive and interdisciplinary education. Taken together, these functions show that visual methods are not supplementary in a narrow sense. Rather, they are a major pedagogical resource for modern education. Thank you for your attention. I hope this lecture has clarified the main visual teaching methods and has shown how observation, illustration, demonstration, and interactive visualization contribute to more effective, inclusive, and development-oriented education.